On to the June meeting of the Finance Committee. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes of the previous meeting. Evelyn, Bill on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We will move item 2B to the end of the meeting. That an executive session will be required there, and as some of you may know, we will also need an executive session on PBA negotiations, which we will take up when Larry gets here. So with that, we'll move.
He's here. Hey, well, I guess we're taking it out.
You see, just magic. Magic. With that, we will move right into our agenda. Item 3.1, request for transfer funds. Evelyn on the motion, bring to the floor. Fred on the second. Any discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 3.1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 3.1 is carried. Item 2, request from the Treasurer's Office. 2A, request for a transfer of funds in the amount of $500,000 from the Budget Code A 1325-2530 to Budget Code A 1325-3014 to accomplish an account code change required by the State Controller for an Indian Gaming Compact and Settlement Agreement revenue as per a bulletin issued on February of 2015. Chair will entertain a motion regarding this. Bud, Gene on the second. Mike, how are you? What do we have here?
This is just basically an accounting thing. The money's coming in, the state just asked us to put it into a specific item code number so that they can keep track of it easier. That's it.
Any questions for Treasurer Fred?
What time period does that represent?
That 500, that's a year.
Let's see.
Is
Is this the second year?
This will be the second year, yeah. We have not received all of the 14 money yet, but we,
that was 400, right?
That would be around 400, yeah.
Huh?
We budgeted for 500 for this year, I believe, right, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what we're doing is we're just collecting the money, and the state has asked us to put it into a different itemized account than what we had it in. That's basically it.
I think I made that point a couple of times in these committee meetings. I really felt that the Indian money was found money, that we had a lot of potential for using it for specific things, and I thought that we should set it aside so that we could do that. It's not taxpayer money. It's found money. And I really felt we should do that. Apparently the governor agreed with me.
Doesn't happen very often.
What was that?
That's what that
Mr. Monroe, did you say something?
No, I knew you were a closet Democrat.
Easy now. I'm running.
I mean, it's really payment for giving up an opportunity because, you know, we've been shut out of the compacts.
That's very true.
Still
All righty. Any other questions for the Treasurer? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 2A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mike. Item 3.
Excuse me, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Dickinson.
I have a question. Where is that money going?
Right now, it's budgeted as revenue. I'm not exactly sure where in the budget it's going, but it's budgeted as revenue, just like the tax money, you know, the sales tax money and everything else is budgeted as revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty. Referral from the Community College Committee. NSTEM building proposed for construction on the SUNY campus. Chris, Anne Marie, how are you? You're on deck.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you again. Thank you. Good. So we did do a full presentation on Monday with both committees. So I'm not sure if you want me to go through and highlight some of the pieces that we shared. Okay. And I think you also have a copy of the PowerPoint that we presented, so I'm just going to kind of walk through a few of the items. But first of all, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share this project request with you and getting it to this point. So we appreciate the support so far. And really the background that I shared is really about need, you know, how this project will relate to teaching and learning and enrollment. And so some of the, bullet items that I presented, such as, you know, most, probably important is that this project is not really new for us. It's been in our facilities master plan. That's something that we have to create and submit to SUNY, every 10 years. It's been on our facilities master plan for the last 23 years. So in terms of the need to renovate our science building is not really a new project. And then over time, as we continue to evaluate and assess our space needs, our needs for programming, this is kind of where we are today. So just to recap, you know, liberal arts, math and science and nursing are within our top 5 degree programs. Nursing and science courses make up about 15% of our credits. Biology and nursing alone is consistently ranked as in the top 5 most popular college majors across the country, and is similar to us. And when you think about workforce need, healthcare and science-related jobs are a big part of our region, our regional workforce needs. The job growth expected for nurses, and you know, especially when we look at the average age of a nurse now, which is hovering somewhere, depending on which statistic you look at, 55 to 58 years old. So the need for more nurses is going to continue, and we want to be able to provide the opportunity to expand our nursing program and be able to support our local workforce. As you know, we recently, in Pottsburgh really recently, got approval to offer their RN to BSN completion program on the Queensbury campus. Previously, students could do it through an online format, and that will still exist, but now they'll also be able to do it in a face-to-face format, which really appeals to multiple types of learners. So we're very excited to be able to have that opportunity for not only our own students, but the community at large. You may also be aware that there's legislation that's actually been floating around for quite some time to legislate that all nurses that are working in particularly hospital settings will be required to have a bachelor's degree. It's called BSN 10 is the legislation. It's actually sitting at the Senate right now, and is expected to be voted on this session. There's been opposition to it in the past. Quite frankly, that opposition has started to wane. Certainly as a college, we support higher education and more credentials. However, we're concerned that given the expected shortage of nurses, the shortage right now, that moving to that as the requirement will certainly put our healthcare facilities at a disadvantage. So what we hope to be able to do is what we are doing, which is partnering with a four-year institution on our campus so that that pathway could be completed seamlessly if a student chooses to, or going out and working and completing that. So having the facilities available that can really support an advanced education for nurses is also important to us. We've approved a new program in biology. We've approved a new program in agriculture management, which certainly has a core of science courses. And we've also have approved a new transfer pathway, which is really taking our liberal arts, math, and science program and identifying chemistry as a transfer pathway. So all 3 of those new degree programs that the college has approved and will now go on to state ed and SUNY to be considered are all related to this project. And then you'll see on the following pages, we just wanted to remind the group of how capital funding is approved through New York State and what we're obligated through education law. And we submit capital requests. There's a 50% share opportunity, so the state will commit 50%, and we have to then raise what's called local share. Local share can come in the form of county support. It can come in the form of funds raised through the foundation, or donors that come forward through federal grants, not state grants. And so it can be a combination of all of those things. Just so you're aware, local share consists really of not only whatever our county sponsors provide, but consistently we receive chargeback money, capital chargeback money through students who attend SUNY Adirondack from outside of our county, and that has been our primary source of chargeback funds for quite some time. Of course, building Wilton and residence halls has helped to increase that chargeback amount, so we're achieving around $400,000 a year in chargeback amounts, and that helps us to be able to at least address some of our critical maintenance projects, but quite frankly, it's not enough to support a large capital project like this. The last time the county supported capital project on campus was 1.2 million when we renovated Eisenhart, which was in 2004, and before that it was to renovate Scoville, which was about 6 million. And then the following slides just give you a snapshot of what we have been doing and how we have been able to be creative in supporting our capital needs, anything from modernizing our facilities, addressing health and safety issues, and improving the teaching and learning environment. And when we add all of those projects up over the last 10 years, we've been able to invest nearly $50 million in the campus infrastructure, which we're pretty proud of. We've been very creative, and we've kind of reached the point where we need to look at, come back to the county and look at your investment in the college and consider ways that we might be able to work on this together. So you'll see some of the projects in there ranging from, of course, the Wilton Center, Regional Higher Education Center, and some of the more mundane types of projects that you all know you have to do when you have a facility, you know, fixing parking lots and sidewalks and lighting and fire alarms, elevators, etc. As I said before, you know, the Wilton and housing really has helped us to increase our chargeback amounts. But considering all the projects that we have just on our deferred maintenance list, when we added those up over the next 10 years, we were looking at nearly $25 million. So $400,000, even $500,000 a year in capital chargebacks would never be able to help us accomplish even those deferred maintenance outside of this project. Then I just wanted to give you a sense of facilities elsewhere, and you know, pointing out Hudson Valley's new science center, which cost them $47 million, certainly state-of-the-art. We have a state-of-the-art lab at Wilton that we kind of can use as a model, and I provided some pictures to show you some differences there. When we built Wilton, and particularly the science classroom, we built it as an interdisciplinary science classroom, which we currently do not have. That actually gives us better flexibility and a more efficient use of our space, and we would be looking in this project to create labs that are more in line with what industry standard is now versus always having a bio lab and a chem lab and a physics lab, which really does reduce your opportunity to best utilize your facilities. You know, it's no big secret. I mean, the science building has not really been touched in any significant way since it was built. And, you know, if you've spent time in there and you spend time in a high school classroom, science classroom, there are many cases where science classrooms at the high school level are nicer than the science classes that we have at the Queensbury campus. And so there's multiple reasons to do this. Let's take the critical maintenance piece. You know, we could defer what we've estimated as about $8.2 million just in deferred maintenance if we were to not do anything with the science building. There's still things we need to address, things like windows potentially falling out and, you know, really serious health and safety issues. But we're also trying to address new program options, addressing the shortage of STEM workforce-ready students, and quite frankly, enrollment and competitiveness. You know, when a student, even at the community college level, students are looking around at their different options. And when we talk about, you know, losing students, so to speak, from our county to Hudson Valley, if you were to look at their facility and come to ours, it would be a difficult sell, so to speak, to be able to say that this is the learning environment that I get to choose. This is not to say at all that our faculty and the equipment in our labs are not modern, because they are, but certainly the infrastructure and the opportunity to provide more efficient space is where we're really trying to head. The other piece I should mention is when in the plans that we've been working with JMZ Architects on, is that each lab would also be expanded from 18 seats to 24 seats. From an efficiency perspective as a college, that really makes a difference for us. That means we can potentially reduce the number of sections, the number of faculty that we need by still meeting the needs of enrollment, and that's important to us. And 24 seats is still an industry standard. It wouldn't be anything that we're trying to compromise the learning environment. It's actually become more of the standard, and so this renovation and addition project would help us to also address that. So if you recall, for those of you who've been around a little bit longer, the last facilities master plan and the last time this project was discussed by my predecessor, we were estimating building a brand new building at the cost of about $36 million. What we decided to do this year, we received some capital funding from the state to be able to do an update to our facilities master plan. So we engaged JMZ Architects back, late fall. They've spent the spring doing an update of our space analysis. You know, things have changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Online classes, Wilton, just industry standards have changed. So we asked them to come in and reassess this particular project because it has been on our list for so long. And actually through their analysis and really re-looking at what space needs we have and programmatic needs, we were actually able to reduce the amount that we were expecting to pay for this renovation and addition. And so rather than build a brand new building, we're looking at building about a 14,000 square foot addition onto the science building and then renovating the current space to a much lesser cost of $20 million. So we were pleased to be able to at least take a very hard look at what we really needed to spend and not overbuild, considering where higher education is going in general. And that's what you've seen in terms of this $20 million project. We've set a timeline just because there's a lot of reasons to be able to keep to this timeline. So, you know, as you would expect, anytime there's a renovation or addition project, there's going to be a ripple effect on our ability to offer what we do. So, you know, we've set aside this timeline that you have in your PowerPoint, that if we were able to secure approval and secure that the funding will be there, that we would actually begin our work late this summer, early fall, in beginning the site work and the design and the build and be able to be prepared to go out to bid next March. We would first do the addition so that it has the least disruption of classes. So we do the addition first. We complete that by the end of next calendar year. Then the following spring, once classes are ended in May, we would be able to go in and begin the work on renovating the current space so that we would be able to move those science classrooms into the new addition, so to disrupt education as little as possible, and then renovate while there's less people on campus. We would fully expect that there will be asbestos removal and other things that we would obviously want to minimize any impact on both students and employees. So that's why you have the timeline in front of you. Each year we push it out. Each year just means it takes longer, and there are financial considerations that you may want to think about in terms of interest rates, construction costs continuing to escalate, et cetera. So we put this together. This is our ideal timeline, and you know, we can obviously work within that as best we can, but that was just meant to give you our expected timeline. And then the last two slides were really about the nuts and bolts of what type of financial commitment the counties could potentially consider. Larry was able to present that to the committees on Monday. I'm assuming you still have this handout, right? Okay. Okay. You know, Larry can certainly step in, but we tried to just outline an option for you to consider, and actually a couple options of how you could potentially structure a bond, when payments would begin, how you might be able to potentially move those payments out a little further to give you more time in being able to consider the cash contribution. So just as a reminder, the split between the counties is also dictated by New York State Ed Law, and that work has been done between Paul and Kevin Hayes at Washington County in coming up with those figures, so you have those. So, you know, kind of in conclusion, we know that this is a good project for our students, for the college, and most importantly, the community. We recognize that finances are difficult for everyone, and as I said in conclusion on Monday, you know, we want to be partners, obviously, with you. We want to figure out the most creative way, and I guess, you know, what I would say is, if it's not now, when? And that's really what, you know, Ron and I talked about. This is really not a project that we can just continue to ignore. We keep kicking the can down, and, you know, we talk about this all the time. We say, should we replace those windows? Well, let's just wait until we do the full renovation. Well, next thing you know, 10 years go by, and now you're really in a position where the deferred maintenance has increased exponentially. So we really just need to figure out how we can address the project needs, and we're happy to work creatively with you in order to do that. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Bud?
Yeah, I have a question. It wasn't clear to me, it's probably my fault, but in the presentation you made the other day, you presented the $20 million science building, but you also talked about a works building
Yep.
at the other end of the existing building.
Yep.
And I wasn't clear about when you wanted to do that one.
So, if you recall, last year, actually, I presented to this body, and we, at that time, were applying for what's called the SUNY 2020 grant. And that's a grant program that the governor has, supported for the last, I think this is round 4, with the intent of being able to build capital projects on college campuses, specifically to demonstrate economic development. So we put a grant application in last year for the full 20 million for, and that was the maximum of the grant. We didn't get it, and there were a couple reasons why we didn't. One being that we couldn't necessarily demonstrate that renovating a science building was truly going to have a job creation aspect, which is what the governor is very interested in. And so, that program just wouldn't work for this project. So what we did instead was put the project in as a regular capital project, and that's where you see that 20 million. But at the same time, we have other needs that we were trying to figure out within this round of SUNY 2020, based on the guidelines the state provided that they would consider as important priorities for funding, how we could leverage and be able to continue to meet our needs, because even though this meets a certain percentage of our needs, we have other space needs on campus. So we were able to identify in the SUNY 2020 grant this round that applied learning is an area that they're very interested in supporting. And so we really looked at how are we currently supporting workforce needs, how are we interacting with the business community, and business being very broadly defined, what facilities do we have or that we could have that could better support workforce and particularly internships and applied learning for our students. And we were able to pull that together in what we're calling the Workforce Readiness Center. That would be basically a cap on the other end of the science building. We submitted that grant application May 1st. It's for $9.7 million. If we don't get it, though, it has no severe impact on what we're able to do. We just wouldn't be able to increase our simulation lab footprint, and we wouldn't be able to provide new space for workforce training, et cetera, but we see them as separate projects, but they have some linkages. So that's a separate fund. If we will not know about being funded in the 2020 round probably until this fall. That's what we're being told. It first goes to SUNY. SUNY reviews the projects and then makes their recommendations to the governor's office. And ultimately, it's the governor's office that makes that decision. So they're two separate projects, somewhat linked, but they don't have to be. And I think that was important to us. We wanted to make sure that we didn't rely on one particular fund to be able to at least address some of the even renovation and space needs that we have right now, but we had an opportunity to be able to expand some of the other programs that we're offering on campus. And one example is our simulation labs that our nursing students use are actually very state-of-the-art. We use them, of course, for our own nursing program, but there is capacity to be able to partner with Glens Falls Hospital and Hudson Headwaters to help provide their workforce. We approach them, they're very interested, and so we see the Workforce Readiness Center would actually allow us to expand those simulation labs so that we could really offer it as a community asset and a workforce readiness asset. So I hope that helps to clarify.
I think perhaps Chris, you or Larry or Anne Marie could just quickly go over the financial spreadsheet information that we have here, just so the board is clear, particularly the bottom part of the section, bottom part of this page.
Good morning. First of all, I'm here really in two capacities. One, I'm counsel to the college, but as you know, I'm also bond counsel to Warren County. And so, with this sheet, it's dated June 8th, which was the day of the meeting 2 days ago, where we outlined how the allocation of the cash requirements of the local share would be determined. And as President Duffy said, that on the $20 million project, $10 million will come from the state, $10 million has to come from the sponsoring counties or the local share. And so the top part of the sheet identifies how that allocation occurs, and it's based on equalized assessed value between the two counties. So Warren County has slightly in excess of $10 billion in equalized assessed value. Washington County is slightly over $5 billion, so that came up to those percentages. The next thing that we did was, take a look at what a $10 million serial bond issue would look like in terms of interest rate and maturity. And these are assumptions that were made, that was a 20-year maturity, 20-year amortization, and a 4% interest rate. The interest rate environment today is very favorable, and actually the 4% would be a conservative number. But as we know that interest rates are about to rise, and so consequently, we thought that even with some slight increase in interest rates short term, that 4% would work. If this were delayed, obviously interest rates would go up. So we took the amortization of the $10 million and then allocated it between Warren and Washington County. Warren County's share would be $6,764,200. That share doesn't have to be financed through a bond. I mean, it's up to the local counties to determine how they would finance their component, but in all likelihood, it would be done through financing. So then we went to the bottom third of the sheet when we said, okay, what would be the cash requirements for Warren County in connection, well, both counties, but in this case, Warren County, what would be the cash requirement? First of all, in 2015, the initial costs that would be spent by the college on this project could be funded out of an advance of those chargebacks that President Duffy talked about. When I say advance, there's cash available, and at the joint committee, there was some reference to the total dollars that are available in that chargeback account, and there would be a sufficient dollar amount, because the total cost that we're looking at is about $500,000. That would be spent from those chargebacks, so there'd be no cash requirement to Warren County in 2015. The thought would be is that Warren County would have to go out to some type of financing in 2016. The choices at that point would either be to do a bond anticipation note or actually bond, depending on the structure that the county wanted to take. And then there's two alternatives. If you were to bond, there would normally be an interest payment due 6 months after the bond. So if the bond were issued in the first half of 2016, there would be an interest payment due at the second half of 2016, and then the amortization would continue. It's customary in these projects to defer that first 6-month interest payment out for a year. And so what we're showing at the bottom part of the schedule is in 2016, there could be a structure whereby there would be no cash requirement from Warren County in 2016 either. The only difference is that you'd be having to make up that 6 months worth of interest in 2017, and that's what those numbers reflect. If you were to do a note, a bond anticipation note, it would be issued in 2016, and the payment would not be due until 2017. So in that scenario, there would be no cash requirement to Warren County in 2016. So those are the two scenarios by which Warren County could defer any payment until 2017, and then it would show going out 2018 and 19 what, using the estimates of a 20-year maturity and a 4% interest rate, net interest cost, what those payments would be. If you go back up to the first projected estimated cash requirement, if you decided to bond in 2016 and pay a 6-month interest payment in 2016, that's what that $135,000 amount represents. And then the amortization in 2017 would be the normal amortization, which would be the same as 2018, 2019. So I know there's a lot of information on the sheet, but we tried to do those three things. One, identify what Warren County's share would be. Two, talk about what the debt service would be on that amount, the $6.7 million, and then show what alternatives could be with regard to how the cash requirements would be going forward, so that there could be an option not to pay any dollars on the project until 2017. But in any event, there's no cash requirement in 2015 under any of the scenarios. So I hope that helps explain what this one-page sheet was intended to identify. So I don't know if there are any questions about the financing piece of it.
Well, just, if we were to bring some cash to bear, we could reduce these payments.
No question. That's what I say.
So, for example, if we were to find ourselves in a position which, for example, if we were to close out West Mountain, we would find ourselves in a position, we could bring some cash to bear and we could reduce these debt service payments substantially going out. We also have, the court expansion facilities. We really, other than the estimates we have, we really don't know at this stage exactly what that's going to cost. And I guess, Paul, my question to you is that when do you think we would have a sense of all of that in terms of, from a financial planning point of view, so that we would know, for example, the committee would know, the board would know that we could possibly fit this project not exceed the 2% tax cap, if we were to, like, for example, in order to stay below the 2% tax cap, we might have to bring some cash to bear. Evelyn?
Chairman, I just want to point out that later on our agenda, we also have $900,000 to find a funding source from.
know.
We've got the communications issue as well. So as we're factoring forward, I think we ought to just bear that in mind, that that's also on the radar.
Oh, I know. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the budget officer was there as Paul was, but I don't recall, Michael, if you were there or not Monday.
I was not able to attend.
Okay. Is this your first time seeing this sheet?
I went over it this morning with Rob Lynch, who was there.
Okay, so at first blush,
Believe me, I'm not anti-education. I've come from a long line of educators, but this presents to me some serious financial problems down the road for the county. That really, we're gonna have to sit down and really review, because just off the top of my head, just rounding some figures, okay? To go with the court expansion and this, that's $1.5 million that we've got no revenue for to come up with in 17 for payments between the court and this, all right? I don't know how you stay under the tax cap with having that kind of a payment without totally decimating some other part of the county. First blush, okay, I just started to go over the figures, but that's what I'm looking at right now. Very grave concerns about this.
Bill?
I also have deep concerns about the impact on the budget. The latest budget report that we got from the Treasurer's Office said revenues were lagging behind in every department, except for occupancy tax, which I'm the chairman of. And I'd like to hear from the budget officer on his opinion on this.
Well, I'm concerned also, I did some preliminary, numbers, and they're my numbers, so they may be right, they may not be. On the amount of debt that's, expiring, and, the payments on the court building, and, we'll be okay in 2016. 2017, though, we need $400,000 additional in the budget just to pay for the courts. So, yeah, another $500,000, we're at $900,000. 2018, you'll need another $200,000 for the courts. And 2019, you'll need $550,000. Guess once you get the college in there, it's in there, but, you know, to stay under the tax cap, it's gonna be difficult.
Rachel?
You know, I spoke briefly with Rob Lynch, and he had, I think we can all agree that it's an important project, and it's one that on face value we're all supportive of. I've heard some really positive comments from other supervisors. But when speaking with Rob, one suggestion that he made was, given the concerns that are facing the county, and particularly from the Treasurer's Office and the budget officer, is there a way to look at giving some commitment, or looking at a scaled down version of it, or looking at some way to say, yes, we're supportive of this, but right now, this is a way to be a little more creative with it. And I don't know what those suggestions might be, but I do know that that was a suggestion made, you know, from the treasurers, instead of saying no altogether, you know, is there a way to kind of meet in the middle? And I don't know the answer to that.
Jim?
Yeah, sort of going along with Rachel, Larry, did you say that you could go 25 days on the bond instead of 20?
Yes,
There could be a decrease in the...
There's, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this. One would be to extend out the maturity to go to 25 years, which would reduce the payment. The other is, if you take a look at what your long-term debt service is gonna be, as, your budget officer has done, you could structure a bond payment so that there's what they call the 50% rule, that no payment can be adjusted more than 50% than another payment. So you could structure it so that you are paying less principal early on, more principal later on. That does increase the overall cost, but from a cash flow standpoint, it might line up better, adjusting it slightly, with other debt that's coming off. So I really think that there's a possibility, once, instead of just looking at it as a single project, the court expansion is a single project, the other item that was mentioned that you, I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds like there's a financial commitment that you need to make. I think that what you need to do is look at the financial picture of the county as a whole, see what debt service is coming down, see if we could structure the county share to a point where your debt payments would be much more level than what, Mike was concerned about. And again, anytime you add $6.7 million worth of debt to any business, there will be added cash requirement needs. I mean, there's no way to add $6.7 million and end up not having to pay for it. But there are ways to try to structure it so that, from a cash flow analysis, it might make more sense.
Would they be willing to go 30 years, or is that too far?
We'd have to look and see with this particular project whether we can go 30 years. We might be able to, depending on what the actual construction is. The way the local finance law operates is that depending on the type of structure that you're building, you can either have a 20, 25, or 30-year useful life. And so we'd have to do a little more analysis of the construction. Assuming it met that criteria, it could be possibly spread out for 30 years.
Gene?
My problem always comes up with this equalization, and, one county pays less than another, But my big thought, and which I think we all have to consider, we're stretching this out, and it stretches out our payments and all, but we still have payments for the county. We have unions, insurance, oil, electric, things to run our county, and it looks like we're stretching this out. And what's gonna happen 5 years from now when we can't make payroll? That's what I worry about.
I think this is a great plan, and certainly, the need for nursing. We run into a problem every time we try to hire a nurse for the county. But I think, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer, and I wouldn't be prepared to vote on this positively until Paul has adjusted our long-term budget plan and determine if we can in fact support it. But I think it's only fair to tell a college, hey, it might be another month, I don't know, Paul, what the number would be, but it might be another month before we're even in a position where we can vote on it.
I think at this stage, Fred, do you have something?
It's a similar comment. I mean, I've been a big supporter of the multi-year budgeting because what it avoids is just looking at it, okay, we'll be all right in 2015, we'll be all right in 16, but need to look at it long term, and I know Paul would probably need more time to look at it, and I wouldn't be prepared to vote on it until we've seen the multi-year budgeting analysis. And I guess I do have one other question, that, just looking at this presentation, it talks about a 26,000 square foot addition, but then that results in only 31,580 square feet of assignable space, and I didn't quite understand that. Is it only, I don't know what's existing, but if we're just looking at the photo or drawing, it looks like the existing building is much bigger than 26,000, so I don't know how we only wind up with 31,000 when you add 26,000. I don't think it has a base number. It's the one that shows the existing building and the addition. Yeah. It's 31,580 is assignable space.
It's not apples and apples, it's apples and oranges. The assignable square feet is minus hallways, bathrooms, maintenance closets, walls. So that's when you get down to the assignable square feet that we're actually allowed to do.
Jim?
Yeah, I was talking about in terms of payments and the length of it, which I really don't think that's the best way to go about it, but sometimes you gotta look at it that way. But the other thing we need to keep in mind are the roads. I mean, we have that's a vital part of our economy, and if we continue to look at one thing and not, if we're gonna do a comprehensive look at our finances, we also have to look at the things that aren't really part of it, but should be. I mean, are we gonna continue to let our roads deteriorate, or are we gonna be more aggressive about it, or how are we gonna handle that? You know, it's an important factor. Can we sort of add that to those, sort of make projections or whatever, or how do we handle that?
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can address some of these concerns. As folks know and have mentioned, we've been working on this multi-year plan over the past several years now, and every year it gets better and better in terms of getting a better handle on what our financial outlook looks over the next several years. And it just so happens the timing actually is pretty good. We have started the multi-year process by requesting certain information from the departments at this point, looking so that we can start to make our projections going ahead over the next few years. If we're on a good track, I am optimistic we might be able to have some numbers for you within a month. So for your next finance meeting or budget, actually, usually I think it comes out of the budget, so maybe you might want to hold some sort of a combined meeting perhaps. But in response to the various comments that have been made, that's exactly what we will do when we look out at all these numbers. What we look at is at all the potential revenues. We look at having to stay within the tax cap. We look at all the demands that are on the county's funds. We look at every single project that we know of that the county has an interest in either undertaking or funding at some point. For instance, the comments have been made about the radios, the emergency radio system. We have Westmount that we still need to resolve and settle. We're going to have a legacy cost, though, with Westmount. So even if there is some sort of a profit from the sale, if you will, we also have to consider what those future legacy costs, which at one point, I think we were right around $350,000. So that's a sum right there all by itself each year. We have the small town tax base issue that we've been trying to resolve with some additional funds. You have a PVA contract that still hasn't been settled, and we don't know what the financial ramifications from all of that will be. We have the roads, and we do have projections, by the way, for the roads and the type of money we need to put into the roads to bring them up to certain standards. Like anything else, there's judgment calls and things that have to be made. We should plan to have unplanned emergencies. For instance, several years ago, we had a washout of Route 11, County Route 11. That was $1 million exposure, which all of a sudden we had no money for. In fact, we had to get special state legislation just to pay for that at that point. So, there's a number of things that we need to plan, and we also have health insurance in terms of not only Westmount, but unfunded health insurance for retirees going forward. That's going to impact our budgets as we go forward. We have retirement costs, which at one point we were looking at last year as extremely favorable. Now we're reading reports from the state controller's office that are telling us, well, we don't think you're going to save as much money as you thought you were. So, we got to look at all of those things. The bottom line is, when we come forward with this plan, we will give you all of this information so that you as a board can decide what is important and what the priorities should be, and we will come up with different ways that you can, manage your funds and plan your projects, and then it'll be a decision for you folks to make as to how you want to do this. Our goal will be to develop options for you that keep you within the confines, number one, of the 2% tax cap, and if that's your choice. I mean, you also have a choice that you could say, well, we feel it's important enough to go past that 2%. That'll be your call. But when we come out with everything, we will ascertain what all these potential future costs are, all your potential future revenues, and then a list of your projects, and then what the impact is as far as the entire cash flow future of the county, so that you stay, obviously we look at trying to keep you at a stable fund balance, and so that you're not in a situation where you were 5 years ago. So we'll provide all of that information, and then, like I say, it'll be up to you folks to make the choices. And at this point, to be very honest with you, I don't know whether you can fit all of these projects into your budget or not. You won't know that until we do all of these projections, and ascertain what all these costs are. But if you can, or if it turns out that your choice is to raise taxes, or if your choice may be to pick and choose, that'll be all your call, and hopefully we'll have the kind of information available to you so you'll be able to do this. And I'm hoping for about a month, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I just don't think we're gonna meet the college timeline of July of this year. I mean, I think we need to be honest with them, and I would think that September of this year, because then we go right into our budget. I mean, you're gonna have two lines of thought. You gotta plan for your budget for next year, but also try to work on this. I would say give us enough time. September, maybe we can get some information by September, but July of 2015, I just don't think is enough time to wade through all these numbers. And because if you rush, then you're wrong. We're affecting the future of the county, and I don't wanna see us do that.
Rachel?
Paul, I just had a question about the multi-year planning, and as Supervisor Wood brought up, even with radios and the communication issues we're having now, of course it's public safety, and I think all of us obviously are very concerned about the issue of public safety. When you're looking at your multi-year plan, are you also going to project perhaps the possible grant funding that could come in from that, or?
Yes.
So we'll see, I think, from my perspective, I'd like to see us be as creative as we can with talking with our local legislatures, with asking if there's grant funding available, not just with the radios, but looking at the college and looking at some of these other projects. And, you know, I think we're gonna start to see more and more of those funds available, but we'll be able to see what will be offset by grants, at least we can confirm at this point.
Exactly, and I think that's what it really turns on for us, is that we won't, put forth any kind of grant funding unless we know that there's a reasonable expectation. For instance, the radios provide a good example, because at least at this point, we have reasonable expectations to believe that you could get roughly $1.9 million in funding. Now, that may or may not happen, but at least it's something that there is written materials, there is information out there that lends itself to some credibility that you could apply and get that kind of money. Whether you will or not is a different story, but at least it's there. In the case of the college, for instance, right now anyway, I don't know of any solid grant leads for this particular building, other than the $10 million that the state has already indicated they would come up with. If we find something, certainly we'll bring that forward.
Jim?
Not to make your life more complicated, and I don't know if it's a necessarily good idea to go 30 years, but when you look, I mean, I'm not even sure if I kind of cringe at the idea of going 30, but can we look into that as well?
We will look at, certainly we can look at all of these options. The one thing I will say about the 30 years to keep in mind, though, is as Larry mentioned earlier, first of all, it'll turn down the law whether or not you could even go 30 years for this particular project. Secondly, though, you also got to look at what your bonding costs are going to be when you go out that far. And then the third thing is whether or not the bonds will even be marketable at a reasonable cost. So you really, there's a lot of ingredients that have to go into taking a look at whether or not you do a 20-year or 30-year bond. As was mentioned by the chairman, maybe you decide you want to put some cash up front, but then we have to look to see where that cash is going to come from. Just to give you an aside, just to show you, there's a lot of things in motion here, but one of the things, if you'll recall, that we've been working on is trying to sell the property across the street. We've had surveys done, and we're getting that property prepared. So there could be a potential revenue source there that might help offset some of these future costs as well. So we look at all of these things, and we'll certainly bring them all forward. The chairman, I think, had a point. I know July would be very, very aggressive. Probably August will be a more comfortable time frame. I believe the college indicated they could push to August. September might be past the college's time frame, I think, based on what I heard. But certainly, I think I do have to comment on, when I said July, I was trying to be optimistic and very aggressive. I mean, I'll certainly try to meet that time frame. But I could see where if we don't get all the information we need, we may be telling you, well, we need a few more, a couple more weeks or something like that.
Matt? Thank you. Chris, memory serves me correct, didn't Washington County approve at Monday's meeting, or did they not?
They approved basically what you did, that the community college committee would forward the proposal to their finance and audit committee in their meeting tomorrow.
Okay, Okay, but they didn't vote on it there at the...
Not, no, not to approve the funding, certainly. What Washington County is doing is they have, submitted a request to increase their mortgage tax by 0.25%, and that's in the Assembly and Senate right now, and so that will help them to determine if they can increase the revenue stream, and in that proposal, it's specifically identified that that additional revenue would go directly to the community college.
Fred?
I just saw some information within the last few days that the tax cap is going to be 0.61% rather than 2%.
It's based on the inflation factor, you're correct, they are currently working the numbers, so, yeah, I don't have that final number yet, but I've seen some kind of, low numbers being thrown out there.
I think the thing that we need to, that's kind of difficult to calculate at this stage, given the sale of Westmount, is exactly where we're going to be and what the future demands are going to be relative to our fund balance. And I think that when we can see through that, then I think that we can, pick our sights up a little bit in terms of some of these other things that we know are important. We know we've kicked the can down the road a long time. But I would like to, at least in 60 days, be able to tell the college, we can't do the project, or we can do the project, but within the following parameters. We can do the project and still meet our other obligations to roads or to the tax cap, whatever it is, and in a very specific sort of way. And I think that's an important message not only for the college, but it's also important in terms of our other partner, which is Washington County. So we have a number of partners here, and including the state of New York, after all, they're picking up half the cost of this project. So this is a $20 million project with, I think it's a terrific project. I view it as much not only an educational project, but really even an economic development project. And I think that if we can go into our budgeting process with keeping this project in mind is something that apparently we all would like to do if we could find a way. I haven't heard anyone speak against the project. So we're just concerned about, obviously, money and how we're going to finance, what this business plan is going to look like. But I think that if we can get to a point in 30 to 60 days where we can get a picture on this, I think that keeping the project in mind, I think we can at least be able to get back to the college in terms of what we can and we can't do financially. Is everyone agreeable to that on the committee, Bill? Evelyn, everyone? Okay, good. Fred?
I think one other point we need to consider, though, is that, while we're paying 67% of this, then we're paying 57% of the operating budget, because that's based on head count, and, what impact will this addition have on the need for more staff? How will it affect the operating budget also?
And that's a good point, and perhaps you could provide some information relative to that for the our budgeting process as well. What impacts? Maybe there's greater efficiencies, not just additional costs, but whatever the net anticipated result is, that would be a good thing to know as well. Alrighty, are we ready to move on? Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Alrighty, referral from the County Facilities Committee, request to establish capital project H359 Airport Upgrade Fuel Farm in the amount of $605,000. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Matt, second. Evelyn, thank you. Discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of item 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Referral from the Economic Growth and Development Committee, request to amend the 2015 county budget to adjust revenues in capital project H313, First Wilderness, 2009, in the amount of $1,153.25.
I'll move 5, 6, and 7.
We have a motion, Bill, to move 5, 6, and 7. Do we have a second to that, Bud? Thank you on the second. Bud Taylor on the second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Referral.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Joe's
Dickinson.
off there just for a second. I wanna go
Go ahead.
back to the airport thing there. What did we do there? We established a capital project, we don't, what about the money?
That's, grant funded,
Grant funded?
and they have, the match in their own funds.
Oh, okay.
You did those often.
I did. I was doing well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize.
Item 8, referral from the Public Safety Committee, Office of Emergency Services, request for a contingent fund transfer in the amount of $2,800 to fund the continued use of the USGS river gauge on Schroon River. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 8A to the floor. Mr. Dickinson, second. Evelyn. Was this the gauge that they were going to discontinue?
Yes.
Any discussion, Fred?
Well, legislative, yesterday, we passed a resolution asking, that would refer to the full board, asking that the federal government continue to fund it. But I mean, we're not gonna get an answer, I won't like the answer we get anyway, so.
Yeah, I suspect that's the case. Any further questions on the subject? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of item 8A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 8A is carried. Sheriff, request to determine a source of funding for Phase 1 of the Communications Radio Upgrades Project at an estimated cost of $959,000. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 8B to the floor for consideration. Edna, on the motion, second. We need a second to bring it to the floor? Okay, Evelyn, thank you on the second. Discussion, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, I wanna talk about this one.
we're all yours.
This is the, phase 1 of, part of the big plan that Televate put together for us. This amount can be reduced by $361,000. That would allow us to do the site in Warrensburg and the site in Luzerne. The town owns the site in Warrensburg, the town owns the site in Luzerne. And then the other amount would be the $100,000 for the repeaters for the car. They have also applied, as, Paul alluded to, they've applied for $1.9 million. The site in Stony Creek is also included in the grant. We're not gonna have time to locate a site in Stony Creek and get a tower up this year. This is all part of the bigger overall plan to improve the radio communications. And I can tell you right now, it's been a tough year for us. I know Luzerne, they don't even use Warren County to dispatch the fire, and that's a shame. You know, we need to fix this system, and the only reason why I went to work with the Sheriff's Department and Mark on this, he feels that he can accomplish these projects this year. That's why we're asking for the money this year to start improvement in the radio communications. But it's tough out there, and I do it every day.
All right, let's start by Edna, Evelyn, can you modify your motion to reduce the dollar amount from the $959,600? I believe the number is $598,600.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that good? Okay, good.
Fine.
So, what's the pleasure of the board regarding this? Any further discussion?
Changing the number?
Yes, what's under consideration now is the Phase 1 of the communication upgrades project in an estimated cost of $598,000. And first let's discuss the project, and then we can discuss the source of funding, if that's all right with the committee.
Yep.
The project itself. Now, my understanding, Mr. Chairman, is this is a standalone element. In other words, if we find ourselves unable to move forward for any reason, we don't receive any grants or any of the other,
These two projects will be completed.
they'll be completed.
Yeah. The tower in Warrensburg and the tower in Luzerne. And then the repeaters for the cars,
And the
which
repeaters.
is $100,000.
Bill?
This is a project that needs to be done not only for the safety of the public, but the safety of our employees also.
And I do, Bill, and that's a good point. The $100,000 was certainly, and this is gonna be $100,000 just for the police cars. This will certainly improve our safety of our deputies, you know, because they'll have that repeater in the car, so when they get out, it'll give them a stronger signal when they're on their portables, so.
Bud?
Is the 100,000 in addition to the 5?
No, that's included.
That's included.
Yes, the 3 items. Luzerne, Warrensburg, and the repeaters.
Maybe briefly, Paul, we could talk about what do you view as our source of funding for this, and, maybe you could talk to it then.
Yeah, the only source of funding that you would have would be your surplus fund balance. The good news on that is, as you know, from 2014, as the books were being closed out by the treasurer, it was ascertained that we had a better year financially than anticipated. There were a number of reasons for that, which I won't go into now, but we did have some good results. So we are ahead in the fund balance of where we originally projected we would be as of last year, and certainly more than $600,000. So I've spoken with Mike. Mike's here today. We both have discussed this. Ideally, obviously, when you're planning your finances, you want to do everything at once, like we were talking about here in the next couple of months. On the other hand, I think we also have to recognize that when there are emergency situations, and if you're in the middle of a construction season and you can't wait, then you have to make these decisions. But in my opinion, you do have the money there. There's no question about it, because, like I say, we did end up better in 2014 than we anticipated. And Mike, I would ask that you could certainly comment on this as well, because I know you've looked at it too.
Mike, you want?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't like spending the fund balance, but we do have more than what we anticipated. This is I consider it a good cause, for lack of a better term. Like I said, I don't like spending any of that money. This is something I think that we can afford, and it's not gonna kill us if we do this right now. As we go forward with this, I mean, this is like anything else. It starts small. We gotta be very careful down the road that it doesn't grow to be something that is uncontrollable. The grant money comes and so forth. We gotta make sure that because I know this is just phase one, right, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
And
you
it's
have a
more-
sheet,
yeah, and
it's
it's-
1.9 million, it lists the projects for the next, if he gets that 1.9, he won't know that till December.
Right.
So we will lose another whole construction season. The board knew about this they know about this program, problem. We had them come in last fall and make their presentation. These were projects that we thought, that Mark thought that he could accomplish this year.
No, and I'm behind that. I just wanna make sure that going down the road.
Oh, no, everything else, he's gonna try to apply for grant funding.
They didn't twist your arm to get you to say that, did they?
No.
This is another cause of this sling. Okay, good. Well, what's the pleasure of the committee regarding this? We have a move, it was on the floor already.
I
It's
thought we
already,
had a motion.
it's already on the floor.
Just to be designated source of funding, in
right.
which case it will appear that it's fund balance, and I would amend my section of the motion
Edna,
to.
you were the motion, do you amend that?
Yeah.
So what this would read is, $598,600, for this phase one communication radio upgrade source of funding, to be the fund balance. And,
Your budget officer.
so that would be the motion, and, before we go any further, I think we should pull our budget officer into this as well. Frank, you're on deck again for,
Yeah, it's a necessary thing now, fire departments. Police are having difficulty communicating. State police are still communicating. We've gone this many years without good communication. Not gonna kill anything, so, but as far as spending the money, I think we should.
I think it's a good example of, we find, where we had an evaluation, we find ourselves in a position where we don't have to borrow, we can bring cash to bear to get this done, and who knows, maybe in 60 days we'll find some cash that we could bring to bear on some of the other projects so that we can reduce the amount of borrowing that's required for, some of these projects. Mike, I see there's another arm there to twist, so, one good arm left.
One arm, a couple of legs.
All righty, is there any further discussion regarding this? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Alrighty, item 9, referrals from the Public Works Committee, request to amend the 2015 county budget to transfer a local match for Palisades Road, CR 26 over Brant Lake Inlet Bridge Project H322 in an amount of $42,488.36. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9A. Mr. Merlino, second. Evelyn, thank you. Discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion on 9A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 9B, request to amend the 2015 county budget in the amount of $4,072 to reflect the receipt of federal and state aid to reimburse for the purchase of airport snow equipment purchase with a 2014 encumbrance. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9B. Mr. Taylor, is there a second on that? Edna, thank you. Discussion? We ready for the question? All those in favor of 9B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9B is carried. 9C, request to decrease capital project H272.9550-280 Harrington Road over Mill Creek Bridge replacement in the amount of $420,064. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9C. Bill, Fred on the second, Fred Monroe on the second. Discussion? Fred?
Yeah, what's, curious how we managed to decrease it by $420,000.
The question was, how they managed to, a decrease on the project, Fred? Was that the,
Yes.
how it managed to decrease? Do we know?
I'm sure.
I don't know the answer to that myself now.
It's on the, if I can just break in, on the resolution request form at the bottom, the last one, H, says purpose of increase or decrease, it says reconcile project funding shares with the final project cost, so perhaps it didn't cost as much as originally thought.
That's probably it. Didn't say
Something like
anything.
that, anyway.
But however we did it, better do more of that.
Well, I was going to say, it's
Never heard of a government project funding another project.
Right.
Right. We almost had to pick you up off the floor, right, Fred? All righty. Any other questions regarding item 9C? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of 9C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9C is carried. 9D, request to increase capital project H322.950550-280 Palisades Road over Brant Lake Inlet Bridge repairs in the amount of $42,488.36 to include local share. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9D. Evelyn, second. Bud Taylor, thank you. Discussion?
Is this Matt's Bridge?
Yeah, the mill, the east end of the mill, I think.
It is.
It's a small one, I think, but,
Great, about time.
well, they finally approved it now.
All righty. We're ready for the question then. Just a moment. Yes, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of 9D signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9D is carried. 9E, request to authorize closure of several capital projects and to return any remaining funds to the funding source as follows. H220, railroad stations improvements, return $14,110 to debt service fund. H259, Grist Mill Road over Stony Creek, return $42,512 to general fund. H262, renovate addition municipal center, no funds remaining. H327, tropical storm Irene, return $107,042 to the general fund. And H328, West Mountain Road, bicycling improvements,
10 cents.
return 10 cents.
Thank God. Thank God.
How's that for specific accounting to the general fund? Chair will entertain a motion regarding 9E. Jean Merlino, Matt Sokol on the second. Discussion?
10 cents.
There being none, are we all in favor of 9E signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9E is carried. 9F, request to determine a funding source for the proposed hazardous materials pickup program. Paul will,
Mr. Chairman, this is something that's working its way right now through committees. We don't have a firm cost on what the hazardous material pickup program will cost. you can probably defer it over till next month based on what I heard at your DPW committee meeting, because I think there's still some work that needs to be done to put it together. But this is the Household Hazardous Waste Program they're trying to put together in Warren County. There is a 50% DEC matching grant available on this one. Clifton Park has done one, I think each year. I'm told it's about $30,000 when they do it, but we haven't done one in so many years, so we're thinking the cost will be considerably higher. Plus, we're looking at 2 locations in the county. So, at this point, it would only be a ballpark guess, but I'm thinking, we ought to probably be thinking in the neighborhood of $100,000 as a high side, hopefully. That means it would be a $200,000 program. I don't think it's gonna be that, but, I wouldn't do anything with it today until we can firm up the numbers a little bit more.
Yeah, and I would like to see, some, participation on the part of people that are disposing. It has, a lot of people that I talk to, they just wanna know how to dispose of it, where to dispose of it. They're not necessarily looking for anything free, and I think that, if perhaps we could pay for all or a good part of this by, some nominal charge, for, what they're disposing of. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, just one other thing, I know, I've been talking with Horkin in our town, our electronics recycler is stopping his business at the end of the month, so that's gonna put another burden on all the communities in the county about, electronics recycling. We had a guy come in to take them, but they changed, infinite wisdom, the state changed the law, so now, that's gonna put another problem to the landfills of all the communities, because I think we're gonna have to stop taking TV sets and computers, or we're gonna have to pay to get rid of them. I mean, I think the stores are supposed to take them back or do something, but I know Matt has the same person as we have. I don't know who you have in Chester, Brad, but I guess he's still gonna do it, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding, it's still gonna continue, but
We may
they're
wanna-
charging for one type of TV, so.
We may wanna piggyback on yours,
Yeah.
but I know we're gonna be.
I'll find out more information.
Yeah,
and get back
I
to
wish
you.
you would.
That's a good thought, if, whatever municipality's moving out in front of, because we're having to do the same thing. Yes, same exact thing, but at whatever municipality, Fred, if you're moving out, first with, soliciting quotes, if you could put a piggyback provision on that, that would be a good thing to, for a number of the towns to be able to piggyback on, that service provider, at least for the coming year, and perhaps, Paul, we could, because we're gonna need to be going out, for our, transfer stations here in the not-too-distant future, maybe, this should be also incorporated into that.
I just bring it up because I know, I think it's the end of June and he's done, and I don't know what we're gonna do. We get quite a few electronic equipment in there, it was nice, he would come in and take it, and then he would recycle it at no cost to us.
Yeah, we are in the same situation, Evelyn.
We had something our firm is still doing, the recycling pickup, and we had the transition, it was very smooth with ours, it wasn't too bad. They do, like with Fred, they charge us for a few TV sets, but, we don't, it's not that we take in that many, so that we've just absorbed the cost in our budget, so as to keep them coming in, so we don't find them where we don't want them. But our guys are still continuing too, so I don't know.
I think they do it by the weight, don't they? Is it by the pound? I think it is.
I think it is, it's so many cents per pound, depending on the size of your TV, but a lot of our other electronics, whatever we take in, there is no charge for that, they're still taking that away for free.
Alrighty, so we'll just, leave this, on the table. You should have received the journal, report identifying transfers that were authorized by the county administrator. Is that, attached?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that should be in your package. The only notable one I think I would point out is, the $25,000 transfer in social services, and that was due to the fact that the, emergency aid for adult, was higher than they budgeted, and on the other hand, though, the good news is that the expenditures for Medicaid assistance were lower, so they were able to take it from one account to the other and just move it over, so the social services budget stays intact. You'll notice quite a few transfers for Westmount and also for employment and training. Employment and training's budget year is ending because that's when the federal government ends, so there's a number there. And Westmount, if you'll recall, we had only budgeted them originally through the 31st, and then we've now extended that, so there's been a number of transfers there. But generally speaking, everything looks pretty much in order. We do carry very tight budgets, though, as you look through these, and if you wonder when you see very small transfers of $50, it's because these particular budget lines, when we go through them at the budget time, we're saying to the department heads now, you know, is this all you anticipate? And then, of course, something happens, they either have an extra day at a conference or some other expense arises, so they need to transfer money around. But the good news is we are able just to do it within the budgets and transfers, so I think you'll find the report, you know, a good report in the sense that it's obviously, the system's working and the county is not being cost additional money.
Good. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the Personnel Committee items 2A and B. Evelyn, Edna on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
We will need an executive session regarding 2B by the county treasurer to regarding Westmount matter, proposed litigation dealing with collection matters, and we will also be discussing PBA contractual matters in executive session as well. Did I state that correctly for the record? Okay, good. Chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Matt, Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are in executive session. Thank you very much.
Just wait, what? Yeah.